Hi, this is Antonio Mejorado, and today we're going to see how to write a subroutine using ifs in Visual Basic for Excel. Here we have a requirement. Given the coefficient for the quadratic equation formula ax to the square plus b times x plus c equals 0, get the roots using that quadratic equation solution where you have minus b plus minus the square root of b to the square plus minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. Okay, so well, we're having a, b, and c as values from the user, and we have to display two different values for the roots, root 1 and root 2. One is with plus and the other with minus. Well, let's define a macro. Click on the developer tab and macro, and we define our macro name, which is roots in this case. And we're gonna define first of all, we're gonna get values for value a, value b, and value c. So the value a equals input box. Our message will be enter value for a. The same for b and for c. Okay, so we're copying and changing the message. So once we have values for a, b, and c, we're trying to get the discriminant. The discriminant is very important because it's the value inside of the square root. It is called by discriminant. So we have the discriminant equals b to the square minus 4 times b times a times c. So, sorry, 4 times a times c. So that is our discriminant. And after that, we're gonna calculate the root 1 and root 2. So the root 1 equals, so be careful with the parentheses, minus the value b plus the square root of the discriminant, which is already calculated, and after that with another parenthesis divided by 2 times the value a. Okay, so be careful with the parentheses. We copying for the root 2, so root 2 is going to be exactly the same but with a minus sign before the square root. Okay, once we have these operations, then we're going to display in a message box using the quotations root 1 equals, and with the ampersand character, the value for root 1, the root 1, ampersand, and another message for root 2, leaving a space, root 2 equals, and we have ampersand again and the root 2 as our other variable. So now we can click on play, enter 1 for a, 5 for b, and 6 for c, and we have the roots minus 2 and minus 3 as the solution for these quadratic equation values. Okay, well, let's suppose that we want to store values in our spreadsheet, in our worksheet, in some cell. So we're going to define range, and the cell between quotations b2 I want to put in a2 I want to put the value. So range a2 dot select, that is to select that cell, and using the active cell function in Excel dot formula R1 C1 equals, and we'll just assign the value, the value a. Okay, so with that statements, we're gonna store that value into a2, which is the cell where I want to store the value for this coefficient a. So we're copying the same for value b, and we're changing, and value b will be stored in b2, and the same for value c. Value c will be stored in c2. Okay, so I change c2 and select and store that value c in c2. So if we click on play now and run the macro and enter the values, we're gonna see now, after the macro running, the values stored in our worksheet A2, B2, C2. Okay, let's define the titles A, B, and C. Okay, so there is a solution. So now let's store the roots in another cell. So we're gonna do the same, but in this case I'm gonna store my root 1 in A4. Okay, the root 1 will be stored, and the same for the root 2. I'm gonna store that value in the B4, I think. Yes. Oh, sorry, I gotta be careful. Anytime you copy, be careful with the copy and paste. Okay, so now B4 is gonna be my cell, so I will select root 2 in B4. So once you run, you're gonna have the solution in the root after root 1 and root 2, as you're gonna see. Okay, there you go, and see, going to the spreadsheet, there you go. Excellent. Now let me put the titles, root 1, root 2. Okay, excellent. As you can see, we have several statements repeated with different cells to copy that into the worksheet. So let's try to write a function that can do that and make an optimal solution for our subroutine. So let's define a function that will get the data from the user and store that data in a specific cell. So we're going to have the parameters, the cell and the variable to store. So cell, it's going to be the cell where you want to store the value, and the variable will be a letter to understand which value I'm getting from the user. So the value, it's going to be our variable to store the value. Okay, so and then we have to store that into enter data. So the value equals input box enter value 4, and using the ampersand we're gonna have the s variable, which is the parameter. So this is gonna be better, it's gonna be like more general solution, so we can reuse that function several times with different variables. So the range will be range with the cell, the parameter cells, and the active formula is going to be equal the value, which is the value I got from the user. And finally, I need to store that value in my function name. Enter data equals the value. So that will ask a value from the user and store that in a specific cell, and it's going to return that value as a function value. Okay, so we can use that several times in our macro. So the value a equals my function enter data, and my parameters will be with quotations the specific cell A2 comma and the variable A. Okay, so enter data will get A2 and A, and the same for value B, but in this case I'm gonna delete that statement because that is my function purpose. So now I'm gonna get, instead of A2 comma A, is gonna be B2 comma B. Okay, and for value C I'm gonna get enter data with C2 comma C. So that will be parameters to the function. The function will work and return the value, and at the same time will store that value in the specific cell I send it with the parameter. Okay, everything is going to be the same. Okay, the rest is going to be the same. I'm going to store the values in the root 1 and root 2 in the specific cell. So if I run, it's going to be exactly the same. 1, 5, 6 for ABC, root 1 minus 2, root 2 minus 3, and that's it, that is stored. Actually, if I delete it, you're gonna see that once you run the macro. So let me delete it and run the macro, and you're gonna see with 1 and 5 and 6 the root 1 and 2. There you go. Okay, so this is gonna be like an optimal solution with not so many statements. Okay, that's it. So, oh my god, with these values, did you see it? With 1, 5 and 6 I have a mistake. The discriminant is negative, so we have an imaginary number, and it is not possible in Excel to calculate an imaginary number. So what do I have to do? We have to make an if to check if the discriminant is less than 0. In this case, I'm going to check if this is bigger or than 0 or equal than 0, and then I'm going to calculate the root 1 and root 2. Okay, otherwise I'm going to say root 1 equals 0, root 2 equals 0. So let me first calculate root 1 and root 2 and leave the rest of the statements as they are. So the root 1, the root 2 equals the specific formula they have, so I'm deleting that from there. So if the discriminant is bigger than or equal 0, I'm calculating the values. Otherwise they will be 0. D root 1 equals 0, D root 2 equals 0, and that's it. Okay, that is my if for. The purpose of the if is just to check the discriminant, and depending on it, calculating the specific values for root 1. In that case, if the discriminant is negative, then the roots will be 0, and you're not trying to get a square root of a negative value. So we have to be careful with that kind of statements. So I'm running again, I give the values, and there you go. With 1, 4, 5 and 6 you have 0 as root 1, 0 as root 2, and that's gonna be okay. So now we're gonna insert shape to leave like a button there with a name, just for the user to have a better way of using this kind like an application. So we're writing this round rectangular button with a name, in this case the quadratic roots. So then we assign the macro with the right button in the mouse. We're assigning the macro. The macro is roots. So once you click outside and click inside, you can use the macro. So you will see, like, if you're using 1, 5 and 6, there you have root -2, root -3, root 1, -2, -3. So try to practice more on using ifs and subroutines, and a combination with subroutines and functions. This is going to be fun. Okay, I hope you like that. Goodbye.